You're listening to the Play Therapy Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks, your source for centered and focused play therapy coaching.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Podcast, where you get a masterclass in child-centered play therapy and practical support and application for your work with children and their families. In today's episode, we are continuing in our Neutrality series, and we're going to look at components of neutrality today. Before we do that, however, 3 housekeeping agenda items. First and foremost, if you are in driving distance of Oxford, Mississippi, I need you to RSVP for the meetup, and or if you're coming to the conference in Oxford, Mississippi, or both. I would love to meet you. I would love to see you. Thank you for those of you that have already signed up. I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be February 21st at 6:30 in the evening after the Friday conference. And it will be 6:30 until the last person leaves. The one in Atlanta, we were there till almost midnight. So I cannot predict end time, but I just want to let you know that we're going to be getting together. So go to playtherapypodcast.com/meetup, or you can click the link in the show notes. So that's topic number 1. Topic number 2, this Friday, I am doing a 4 CEU course with Corwell. Really kind of an overview of child-centered play therapy. So the pillars, the foundations, the basics. If you are new to child-centered play therapy, if you're wanting to learn more, if you're wanting to hone skills, maybe you're still in school, you're a graduate, or you just recently found CCPT on your journey toward working with children, this would be a really helpful course for you. 4 hours, you'll get CEUs for it approved by APT. So if you are interested, you can click on the link in the show notes for that as well. That will be this Friday from 2 to 6 Eastern. So make sure that you know time zones, 2 to 6 Eastern on this coming Friday, the last Friday in January. And then finally, many of you have been emailing and asking, so I wanted to give you an update. I finally, this last weekend, finished all the CPRT videos for the certification program in CPRT that we're going to be releasing with Corwell. So finally, oh my gosh, y'all, it's a lot of videos, but they're done. We are in post-production editing, and those should be available really soon. Many of you are wondering how many CEUs it's going to be. I suspect somewhere in the 15 to 20 CE range, and there will be a certification. So if you really want to offer CPRT to your families, you want to be much more trained, much more knowledgeable, this would be an incredible opportunity for you to do that. And we will have a certification through Corwell, and you can say that you are CPRT certified through Corwell's program. So I'm really looking forward to releasing that for you all. I know many of you have been waiting. Thanks for your patience. There are only so many hours in the day. Oh my gosh. I need a robot version of myself, and then things would get done so much faster. Okay. Not that I'm advocating for AI or any other technological advances that mean that we don't need to be smart and use our brains. But anyway, okay, so let's dive into neutrality. So one of the things that I've been thinking about as we've been working through this series is what neutrality actually looks like, because we talk about wanting to be neutral. We talk about the need for neutrality, the benefit of staying neutral in the playroom. So there's all of these things that we've considered, but I guess what I'm trying to filter down is, how would I define that? What would I actually say that looks like, practically speaking, in a session? And I came up with 4 things, just kind of thinking through it, doing some research on neutrality, going all the way back to Rogers. So I've kind of settled on 4 things, and I want to process those today. So first is, when you're in the playroom, you're not taking sides. And here's where I think that lands when we're doing CCPT. A child is always going to be working through a pendulum swing. A child's going to be working through their issues in pretty contrasting manners. So what I mean by that is, a kid comes in, they're highly anxious. That's one side. Then they start doing fear-facing work. That's the other side. They come in and they're really power and control hungry at the beginning. That's a side. Then they pendulum swing and they let you have power and control. That's the other side. And that back and forth nature is very consistent in the playroom and in our work with kids. But sometimes we want kids to stay on one side of that than the other. You know, I have so many therapists that say, I would much rather have a kid that lets me have some power and control rather than a kid that orders me around all session. That's taking a side. I would much rather have a calm, regulated kid than an aggressive room wrecker. That's taking a side. And so I think neutrality is about realizing that a part of our work is accepting and acknowledging both. Kids are going to be aggressive and calm. Kids are going to be anxious and work on their fears. Kids are going to play out good and bad. Kids are going to test limits and comply with limits. You see? So there's all of these sides, but I think that our goal in neutrality is to accept both. And quite honestly, not just accept them, but embrace both. View both as a necessary part of the journey. The pendulum swings for a reason. It's stuck on one side, it has to swing to the other. We can't expect a child to operate on one side of the fence. So, not taking sides, my first, I guess, working definition of what it means to be neutral. Second is no judgment. And we've talked about this in the last few in this series as well. When we are in a session, there cannot be judgment of what's happening. Because now all of a sudden, if we're being judgmental, it's about our feelings, our thoughts, and our experience. I wish that you should, I don't like that, can you please? Now all of a sudden, it's all about us. And CCPT is all about the child. So we have to refrain from judging whatever's going on. Ties into not taking sides. It's embracing the notion of anything that's happening is necessary. Anything that's happening is relevant. And while we may not like it, I could give you a laundry list, legitimately, a very long list. You all know how much I love lists. You could fill many, many pages in my list of things that I don't like that happen in a playroom. And then you can fill a very long list with things that I do like that happens in a playroom. But that's the point, right? There's things that are positive and negative, but they're both necessary. There are things that we may not particularly feel great about, but it's a required element of the child's work. If we believe that kids know what they need to do, then we believe there's purpose in everything. We believe that every single thing that happens is an integral piece of the process that the child is moving toward healing. So, not judging, second component. Third, that the child is the one that solves the problems. Finds solutions, gains insight, works through the things that they need to work through, and they settle. And by recognizing that there's autonomy and there's self-actualizing and there's freedom and there's power for a child, our neutrality is, I don't need to do anything. I'm just going to let you sort this out. I'm going to let you solve this problem. I'm going to let you swing to both sides of the pendulum and then find balanced center. I'm going to let you shift back and forth between these conflicting realities until you realize where you want to land. There's no need for us to get involved and push or control or regulate or do anything because the child will get there. So we do not need to find solutions or provide anything for the child. And then fourth, in order to be truly neutral, we have to have a very deep level of empathy for every single kid. Actually, to be neutral, we have to have empathy for every single human. This extends to parents and principals and pediatricians and your spouse and your children and your best friends and everyone in the world. You have to have empathy. You have to realize that what is happening right now in this moment, it's very real for the child. It's necessary for the child. It's a requirement at this moment. Is it sometimes maladaptive? Yes. Is it sometimes dysregulated? Yes. Is it sometimes impulsive? Yes. Is it sometimes reckless? Yes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in this moment, it's necessary. And I have empathy to meet you where you are and to really fully try to understand the depth of this for you and care that this is where you are. When a kid comes in and is ordering you around like a dictator, when a kid comes in and intentionally hurts you physically, when a kid comes in and cusses at you and tells you how much they hate you for the entire therapeutic hour, when a kid comes in and intentionally and with glee wrecks your room the whole time saying, and you're going to have to clean this entire huge mess up. Ha ha. We've all been there, right? I mean, you can think of the kids where you're like, oh my gosh, that session, right? But here's the thing. Neutrality is that kid doesn't want to be in that place. That kid is stuck. That kid has no coping. That kid has no emotional vocabulary. That kid has no self-esteem. That kid has no sense of a healthy relationship. That kid is scared to death of being abandoned. That kid is fill in the blank. And that's where empathy comes in, because if you realize that anything that's going on is because of where the child is, no human being wants to stay stuck in maladaptive coping. No human being wants to stay stuck in dysregulation. That's the whole premise of self-actualizing. So if they're in that moment, in that session, in that playroom, empathy is needed. It's not anger, it's not resentment, it's not frustration, it's not intolerance, it's empathy. That's neutrality. I can just hold this space for you. I recognize this is what you need to do right now, even though you wish you could do something else. This is all you can do right now. And I will embrace it because it's a necessary part of your journey. That's neutrality. And here's a little anecdote. So I read an article, and I'm just going to quote one line from it. The line says, "Neutrality is not possible for therapists, and feigning it does not serve clients." Ponder that, to quote the great Gary Landreth. All right, so ponder that. Neutrality is not possible for therapists, and feigning it does not serve clients. Well, complete, true, 100% adherence to neutrality, I agree that's probably not possible. We are human. We have emotions. We have opinions. We have conditions. We have expectations. Okay, so is 100% neutrality possible? Probably not. And I 100% agree, if you are feigning neutrality and you are not neutral, if you are faking and trying to put on airs that you are forcing yourself to come across as neutral when inside you're seething, I agree that does not serve clients. But I view that line in that article as a get out of jail free card. Well, neutrality is not possible and feigning it doesn't serve clients, so we'll just move on. Hard no. Our number one priority every single time we step into that playroom with that child is neutrality. Are we going to be 100% capable of accomplishing it? Maybe not. Should we fake it? Never. We talked about congruence in one of the earlier neutrality episodes, right? We need to be congruent. That's the January theme in the collective right now. We've been spending a lot of time on congruence. Why? Because you can't put on airs that you accept a child when inside you're going, oh my gosh, I can't wait for this session to be over. Okay. Kid's going to sniff that out a mile away, and that's going to be nothing but a fracture in your relationship. So 100% don't fake it, but we work toward becoming more neutral. We work toward not taking sides. We work toward not being judgmental. We work toward letting kids find their own solutions and gain their own insight. And we work toward having higher levels of empathy. There's a striving here. There's an intentional striving. There's purpose in saying, I understand the importance of neutrality, so I'm going to work and work and work, and I'll never fully get there, but I will never stop trying. We absolutely should prioritize neutrality. And while maybe not 100% possible, we can be almost completely neutral if we make it something that we prioritize and that we spend energy and time to do. 10,000 hours to master something, ancient Chinese proverb. How many hours have you spent mastering neutrality? I can guarantee you not 10,000. So it's worth pursuing. But we absolutely should not fake neutrality when we don't feel it. So be congruent. If something is irritating you, accept that, embrace that. Wow, this session is just getting under my skin. Let me give an illustration. I was on a coaching call yesterday, and I did not get permission to share this story, so I'm going to not share her name. But I was on a coaching call yesterday, and she mentioned that she was in a session, and she realized that cognitively, she knew she was not upset with her client. She said, I could think through and I could recognize that cognitively, I was not upset at what was happening in the session. But I also was very aware that I was actually full of rage for some reason. And she's like, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. She went home, she processed it, she talked to people, and she said, and I just realized that I was raised that I would have gotten the belt if I acted that way. I was raised that I would have been put in my place immediately if I would have said and done some of those things. The kid was cussing at her. I mean, just hateful, angry, hateful, resistant, all kinds of stuff going on in the playroom. And she said, I grew up in such a way that would have never been tolerated. And it filled me with rage that, I could not relate to where this child was because I would have never behaved that way. I would have never been able to behave that way. I would have been stopped before it even began. And so here's why I'm bringing that story up, because she realized that she couldn't fake it. She was cognitively saying, I'm okay with this child's anger, but emotionally and experientially, she wasn't. And she had to spend the time to work through that. That's congruence work. That's neutrality work. Find yourself going, wow, I really am not okay with what's going on in this session right now. Accept it, embrace it, be congruent, and then go home and figure out why. We have to do our own work to do this work. Dang, that's a pearl of wisdom quote right there. Write that down. We have to do our own work to do this work. You should know thyself, you should work on thyself, and you should better thyself. Because trying to be neutral, trying to convey empathy, trying not to judge, trying not to take sides, all this stuff, it requires a really deep sense of self-understanding and self-awareness. And when you're carrying stuff with you, when stuff from your childhood, when stuff from your relationships, when stuff from your experiences, when it comes up, which it inevitably does, that's our opportunity to sort through it, figure it out, and then use it to become more neutral and more congruent in sessions. There's so much power there, y'all. So I hope that encourages you. I hope that it kind of is starting to resonate at a deeper level about what this whole neutrality thing is. I think we will likely wrap up this series next time. And I'm hopeful that I'm going to get to read something to you all. I'm waiting to get permission. So I'm hopeful that I can read something. And gosh, if it didn't just kind of tie up neutrality in a little essay form, I'm really hopeful that I can share that with you. So if you want to reach out to me, I'd love to hear from you, Brenna at thekidcounselor.com. If you want to say hello, send me an email, check in, say that you don't agree with anything I say, whatever. I'd love to hear from you. All right. Love y'all. Have a great week. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks. For more episodes and resources, please go to www.playtherapypodcast.com.